I've tried everything else, but I have never tried this. What if I was to give this a shot? Try this Christian thing for 30 days. Worst case, it's all fake, and I live another 30 days. Best case, maybe my life can change.
Hello, Mr. Scott. Welcome to Online Book Club.
So great to be here. I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me.
Let's start by talking about Christianity. You present Christianity in your book as a source of love, understanding, and acceptance. And these are things the average person desires. But for some reason, it is rejected by a lot of people. So why do you think this is, and what has been your experience connecting with people who feel this way?
Well, I have a unique position because I've been both. I've been the person to push Christianity away, and I've been the person to, I would say, reluctantly accept it and then to embrace it. And I feel like one of the biggest weaknesses of Christianity is the people, because we're all humans, right? And so many of the perceptions outside of the faith are usually gained from the people who represent Christianity to the non-Christian world. And a lot of times those people aren't bringing their full authentic self. They're not bringing maybe the best version of what God is doing in them to the public. And for whatever reason, maybe it's for, maybe they're trying to grow a church, and so they've got a public persona that they're trying to convey. And I think that people outside of the faith, I think they see that as inauthentic and just fake. They don't believe that what is being offered to them by being a follower of Jesus is actually real. And so one of my biggest obstacles as I've talked to people throughout the world about my faith and my journey is to not give them things that are, we could argue about the Bible. We could argue about lots of different things about faith. But what you can't argue about is what God is doing in someone's heart. And even people that are as far away from Jesus as they could be, God is still doing something in their lives, and you can help them get in touch with those moments. And I think when they start to identify that and feel that presence, that's where the real magic happens.
You talked about how easy it is to get carried away with the optics and forget the main goal in your book. I think when you shared your experience with the homeless man. So yeah, it makes so much sense. Now, some people might say it's easy to talk about God with so much conviction when you have encountered him in such a grand way, in a way most people might not and have not. So what advice would you give to a person struggling to find faith without those big undeniable moments?
I think God presents himself to us in the ways that we need him presented to us. For me, I needed something so absolutely insanely huge that I could not deny it. And I would say that speaks to how far away from God I was. And the more that I felt God's presence, the more that he helped me kind of get back up on my feet and have a life that I could never imagine, better than I could ever imagine. What I've found was that God kept showing up. And then as I would talk to people who had been lifelong Christians, and they sometimes would be envious of this, exciting adventure I've been on with God. And I honestly believe it's available to all of us. And I think that as we seek God, he will show up. And if you want to feel God catch you as you jump off of a cliff in Croatia, then you've got to put yourself into those positions where you're feeling where you're embracing the opportunities for him to hold you and to guide you and to lead you. And I actually hesitate to even say that because I have friends who are amazing followers of God, and they are 100% led by Christ. And I don't want to belittle anything that they have done in their journey, because what they do is authentic to themselves. But I always think that each of us, every single person, we can step further into that idea of faith, into that idea of trust, into that idea of surrender. And the more that we relinquish control and give it to God, I think the more we get to experience those moments. And there's also something to be said for watching for them, because God is doing magic things around us all the time. I mean, the sun came up this morning. I don't know, it probably came up where you are too. And we could see that as being, well, that just happens every day. Well, it does. But the fact that that happens every day is beautiful. The fact that you get to see it is beautiful. The fact that I got to see it and we saw it at different times, probably, that's beautiful. And that's the magic of God. We just have to embrace it and say thanks.
So there are miracles everywhere. We just have to open up our eyes to see it. Okay, we must talk about the title of your book, A Row with Two Chairs. It's a very striking image, yeah? And one sparks curiosity, because why does this row have just two chairs? So what does it mean? What does it mean to you? Why a row with two chairs?
Well, I have almost a weakness in this, because I can see the row. I can see this place in this church, which was where I went so that I could be around no one. So I could be as reserved and removed as possible from everyone that was there, because I wanted nothing to do with it. And the irony to me was that in that space was where I found God the most. And if you recall, my first visit to that church, I sat on this row, had literally two chairs wide, and there was a gentleman that walked across the row and shook my hand. And I mean, just riveted me in that experience. And as I went back to retell the story, and I told it many, many times before it ever made it into the book, I found that motif was in many places in my life. So for me, A Row with Two Chairs is it's where it started, and also in many ways where it continues.
All right. Speaking of how it started, you hit what most people would describe as rock bottom in a way most people cannot imagine. But you decided to share your story. So why did you choose to share such a delicate story in such details with the world?
It's a great question. My vulnerable story, it was all I had for the longest time that really gave me any idea of who I was. It was scary for the first few months. I talk about it in the book, that I really was hiding from the reality of what I had endured, and I had no idea of really the wonder that was a part of it. So as I got to share it with a pastor and learn the power of telling the story, it made it easier and easier to share it over time. But it's one thing to tell a story to friends and tell a story to people that you meet. It's an entirely different thing to put it into a book, where you no longer have control over who reads it or how they perceive it or how they experience it. And that was a little bit scary. What motivated me initially was just the fact that in the memoir, my father passes away at the end of the book, and that for me was a defining moment. But it was defining for many reasons. The one that motivated me to write this book, though, was that when he died, there's a lot of information that died with him, a lot of things that I would never be able to find out again, questions I've wondered. And I started thinking about what would my kids experience. I mean, they're now 7 and 9 years old. They're not old enough to understand most of what I could even tell them. So I thought it would be powerful for them to be able to go back and read the real story, the all the gory details, the ugliness, the challenging pieces, and my hope was that they'd be able to read that and learn more about me, learn more about what God is doing. And then as I started to write it, I saw that there was something there more hopefully for the world.
You write about your relationship with your father with such honesty, with some emotions ranging from admiration to tension. So, do you think that shaped your relationship with God as your heavenly Father in any way?
I think it has a lot of influence on my relationship with God. So someone told me once, before I ever had children, that you can't really grasp God's love for us until you have your own kids, and when you have your own kids, even the love that you feel for them is only an inkling of what God feels for us, which is mind blowing. But when I look back on my relationship with my dad, yeah, there was a lot of conflict, a lot of challenges, a lot of difficulty. Um, but one thing that was clear, even in his mistakes and in his struggles, was that he loved me, and that is a gift, because I think not everybody has that. So I can look back and I could be mad at my dad for the things that I think for divorcing my mom. I could be mad at him for any number of mistakes that he made or things that he did differently than what I would have done. But I never had to wonder if he loved me. So how does that apply to my relationship with God? I feel like when I fell into this relationship with God, or at least when I found myself there, I mean, God was there all along, but when I finally admitted that I was a part of it too, I got to experience God on that level. And what I had to unlearn was the failure side. The mistakes that my dad made, I was not going to see God make those same mistakes. I was not going to see God make decisions that weren't, I was going to say, not in my best interest. I think my dad was always trying to make decisions in my best interest, but he's a human, and God is all powerful. So it's easy to take all the beautiful parts of my relationship with my father and apply them to my relationship with God, and to honestly heal and work on the negative parts. And God is a great source to work on those with, because he's worthy of that.
Clearly, you put a lot of trust in God. This is reflected very generously throughout your book. But there were times when you trusted Him to help you out and things didn't go exactly as planned, like the potential relationship with Joel and the visa situation. So, how did you deal with the sting of those letdowns, and how come they didn't unravel your fate?
So well, first of all, talk about Joelle. I didn't feel like God was telling me that there was a relationship with her. I felt the opportunity, like maybe there was. And I could see, I mean, you could even talk, if you recall, I got arrested early in the book, and I'm like being taken to jail by a police officer, a female police officer. I'm like, I could see a good story here. God could be making this in. But that wasn't God's guidance showing me that. It was just what I had learned about God. It started to seem like these stories could make sense for what I see God doing. Now, do I think God led me to have a friendship, and he could have even encouraged the desire for more with Joel? That's possible. But what I see more is that God was more interested in the surrender to the process and the willingness to accept whichever way it went. And that's hard as a human. It's hard to totally give up control in those situations, especially when you're trying to meet someone that you think potentially could be your wife or whatever. You at least I felt the need to control it at times. And what I think God was continuously calling me to was to relinquish control, to give him control. Yeah. And so in those regards, he didn't fail me at all. And the passport issue is such a funny issue, because it seems like such a easy thing for God to have solved, right? And it was so gosh, it was like poetic justice that the day before I'm supposed to leave, I find out that I didn't get a visa. I mean, it's the stupidest thing. I couldn't undo it at that point. I mean, if I had found out 2 weeks before then, I probably wouldn't have gone to Paris. But the wheels were in motion, and I was like, okay, whatever. And now I look back on that time, and it's almost a fun asterisk to the trip, because what I got to learn what it meant to be, first of all, in complete surrender. I had actually like arrived at a place where my faith overrode and overpowered every bit of my circumstance, and that is a pretty cool place to be. And then secondly, I got to experience living in France as an illegal alien. Like I wasn't nearly as bad as some of the people that I know that are experiencing that now in different countries, and but to experience that, to have that fear, even a shred of it, even now in the United States, as I see some of the battles that we're going through politically, talking about people that are documented or undocumented, empathize more with them than I think a lot of people can, because I have lived at least a small amount as that person in a country where I didn't speak the language, where I didn't know the culture, and I wasn't even there legally. So I feel like that has massively changed me as a human.
Okay, but how did you get to that point of total acceptance? Because when you lost the visa, you weren't even mad or angry. You believed that God was in charge and everything was still under control. So yes, how did you get to that point?
Man, I don't know. I don't think I actually questioned God that much. Probably because, at least in that situation, I didn't have time. I mean, I just didn't have time. And maybe that is the gift, right? Maybe God had orchestrated it in such a way that there just wasn't a space to do that. But it's I think that for me, and it's a powerful question you're asking. I had seen God do so much, and felt him do so much in my life. I mean, if at that point I could literally look back, and I mean, in terms of the book, I think that's about a third of the book that is before that moment, and I left out. I mean, I left out a lot. God did so much in my life that there was no question at all that God had a hold of me. There was no question at all that we were going to go do something amazing. I had no idea what it was. I was terrified. I was everything that you could imagine, but I was also confident in the call. And when you've got that confidence in and knowing that it's that beautiful idea that God is saying, who will go and do this? And when you finally get up the nerve to say, you know what, God, I'll do it. I will give up everything I have and I will go try this. Then I don't care what comes against you. It's like, you can't stop me now, because God has got my back. And I mean, no government, no army, no anything can stop me, because I have the creator of all of the universe behind me. And that, I guess it makes it easy to not doubt it when you're there.
Clearly, you have a very personal and deep relationship with God. And honestly, this is not the case for most people. Take me, for example. I know I'm Christian because I was born into a Christian home, and that's not the case for most people. They didn't start as a personal journey or anything like that. So you talked about how the turbulence, like the church issue, our destiny, and even your foundation church growing up really shook the church community and even your family, and it troubled you deeply. So would you advise Christians to always separate their faith from the church, or does it always have to go together?
My experience, I don't know what everybody should do. What I've found is that the church, every single one of them is flawed. Every pastor is, they're all human. They don't all like to know that, but it's true. So anytime that we put a pastor or a church in the place of our faith or in place of God, it's destined to let us down without fail. So I had to learn this, unfortunately, the hard way, and I would love to say that I've arrived and I never make that mistake now. I still make that mistake. I still meet people that I put higher than they should be, and I don't accept their, I mean, some of them are celebrities, right? Or celebrity authors, or, we just went and saw a great band and I really love the lead singer. He's so cool, but I have to remind myself, well, he's just as human as I am. And if I put him up on that pedestal, he will fail because we all do. We all fail. We're all sinners. We all make mistakes. So the only one that is worthy of that worship is God. And do you separate that from the church? In some ways you do, because you don't want to put the church on that pedestal, but in other ways, the church is a mandatory, for me, part of that journey, because I need to be in community with other people that are also chasing God. So for me, I found that pursuing a life of faith requires the church, but it does not mandate that the church be my idol of worship.
You traveled quite a bit, and from your book, clearly, that's shifted something in you. So please share with us how your experiences abroad reshaped your sense of who you are and what faith means to you.
Well, my first experience out of the country was when I was in my early 20s, and it was when I went to Switzerland the first time. And it was shocking to me to imagine that while I was sleeping in my comfortable bed back in the United States, there was a whole nother world that was going on, that I was not the center of the universe, which is funny to say now. I'm old enough and wise enough, hopefully, to know differently. But in my early 20s, that was a shock. But I really liked what I learned. I really liked learning about other cultures, about other cuisines, about other ideas of life. And the thing that I found then, even in that small, I mean, it was I think a 2-week trip, I found the reality was that we're all so similar, right? We're kind of trying to do the same things. Maybe we're using different words, or maybe using different foods or different customs to get there, but we're all trying to find a life that means something more than ordinary. So over the years, I learned to experience that more. And then when I finally went and lived in France, I experienced a lot more culture then, because I was dealing with people of all different faiths, Muslim, a lot of Muslim people, just a lot of different faiths. And it was interesting to see the way that they were trying to achieve the same kinds of things that I was trying to achieve as a missionary, or that I was trying to achieve as a human. And I could evaluate their success. I'm not sure I wrote about it in the book, but I walked out of my language school one day and I saw a huge line of people lined up to get a free meal. And I was like, wow, that organization has got it figured out. They are feeding the hungry. They're doing amazing things. And it was a Muslim organization. And I was like, what? Why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we, the church, doing this? Because why aren't we helping these people? And I went back to the apartment and asked Mark about it, and he said, well, it's part of the Quran, is that they have to feed people that are hungry. So found that enlightening, and it made me have a whole different perspective on the Muslim culture. And then since then, I know a number of Muslim people, and they're amazing people. And I know a number of people in all different types of faiths, and even people that have found themselves without faith, and they also are amazing people. And as we look to each other and find the gifts and find the commonality in our pursuit of a better life, I feel like we arrive somewhat better together.
Yeah. You've given us front row seats to your life with a row with 2 chairs, and part of it were very, very sad. So I can imagine that revisiting those memories was very painful for you. And yeah, if that was the case, what part of it was the most difficult to write?
There were several. I'm in the process, or I have recently recorded the audiobook, so I've had to go through and read the book aloud. Now, I think I've done it 10 times that I've read through the entire book and recorded it. And there are certain parts that are still very difficult for me to even read, much less write. Um, the, I mean, even trying to talk about it now, I'm like, oh, I'm going to choke up. Um, I think the hardest part to read for me was when I said goodbye to my dog, getting ready to go to Paris, and I, kind of hand the ownership of my dog to my sister. It was gut wrenching. It was a very difficult moment. And I honestly, at the time I wrote it, what I thought would be interesting was that I had spent so many years telling people the stories of that I was a missionary in Paris, and you hear that story, you hear that sentence, missionary in Paris, and it's like, oh, that sounds nice, Paris, Eiffel Tower, and baguettes, and all these great things. But what I felt like people didn't understand was the amount of sacrifice that it requires to be in another country and to experience what it takes to get there. First of all, that 6 months of whittling your life down to just 2 suitcases is difficult. And then to say goodbye to everything to go chase this thing that you really have no definition of is scary. Which leads into the next part that was really difficult to say. The more challenging part from it was when I said goodbye to my father, because we had so much friction before I left. But saying goodbye to him was it still chokes me up to watch, like the visual of watching him walk away and wiping the tears from his eyes for the last time that I was going to see him, at least for then. It was a very, very, very difficult moment. And even you talked about having that resolve, that ability to not question God. That resolve was so important as in those last few moments, especially to give up Sam and to say goodbye to my dad, not knowing when I would see any of them again, that it was time to go. And I trusted that God had me. It was powerful. Big experience. Oh, but I will address this as well. The overdose stuff is not that hard to write about, ironically. I've told the story enough times. What was scary was that my mom had never heard those details, ever. So I wrote the book, and I had to go out with my mom. I took her to lunch, and I said, "Mom, I've written a book about my experience of faith, and I need to tell you the awful, gory details before you read them in the book." And she's like, "What?" And so for the first time, I mean, it had been at that point 18, 19 years since I had had the overdose. It was the first time I told my mom the whole story. And that was difficult. That was the hard part of that, was that there were people that had never heard those details. But I believed wholeheartedly that it was important to have the detail in there, because it paints such a stark picture of the desperation that I felt, to where I was willing to try this thing that I didn't believe in. And it's a dark place, but it's like, man, if Christianity had not been real, and literally had just meant that I got to live 30 more days, that would have been a win for me, because it was so bad. But instead, God showed up, and man, did he show off, and gave me a life that still to this day takes my breath away. I'm so thankful. And for the few times, hopefully few times, that I forget that, or I lose sight of it, I go back to these stories, and I'm reminded of really the majesty, the grace, the nurturing that God did of me as a brand new human at that time, to help me figure out who I was. It's a beautiful, beautiful journey.
Yeah.
And obviously I could talk about it forever. So.
That was a very important part of the story, because the contrast between who you were when the story started and who you became towards the end of the story is just mind blowing. All right, we have come to the end of our interview, and I just want to say I really enjoyed reading your book. Your story is such a great one, and you are a wonderful writer.
Hey, God bless you.